Thanks for joining us today, everyone, on our Thursday community call. This will be our last Thursday community call for a little while as we move to that once a week format on Tuesdays. On today's call, we're going to have another conversation with gyms that have been able to reopen, and um, we'll have a pretty similar format to other calls where we'll go through a quick little tutorial on Zoom, cover the ground rules, introduce our panelists for the day, and then we'll hear from each of them individually and to give you guys a chance to ask any questions that you might have. So feel free to start typing those questions in at any moment throughout people's presentations or during any of the Zoom tutorials that I'll give you. Um, like I said, go ahead and type those questions in. During the question and answer period, feel free to raise your hand. We can unmute you if you have anything you'd like to say out loud or that's a bit too more in depth than the chat or question dialog box allows. You can also use that chat to talk amongst yourselves and to the panelists. If you want to talk to everyone, make sure you just use that drop down to select to all panelists and attendees. That way everyone can see what you're typing. Our ground rules, as always, will be to be polite and respectful to our panelists, the CWA, and each other. If we do unmute you, keep any comments to 2 minutes or less. Keep any political commentary out of this, and we'll remove anyone who abuses those rules just to keep the conversation moving smoothly. Want to thank our panelists for joining us today. We've got an interesting group today. Rather than having just some commercial facilities, or I wanted to get some different perspectives in. So we've got Lance Brock with us from Climb. Climb Nashville is their first gym. And Lance is a little bit different than some of our previous panelists in that he has to operate in a number of different states. And I think even in Tennessee, a couple different counties, which might have various rules. So I'm sure he's had a lot of stuff to navigate. We've got Jason Kurten here with us from Texas A&M. He's the assistant director of the outdoor rec department, which covers their indoor climbing as well. And then all the way from Germany, we have Christian Popien, who runs Climb in Klettersport and also the Bahnhof BLO climbing gym and cafe. And he, you guys might remember or be familiar with his name from a couple different places, but one most recently notable was he was one of the authors um, in the strategy document that was put out early on, providing some of the different things that people have been thinking about during the reopening phase. So without further from me, I'm just going to jump right in and maybe grab Lance to share his story, and we'll start there.
You want my reopening story or like my story from birth?
Yeah, maybe a little bit from birth. Let's make it a little more personal.
Do you want to hear about the climbing gym origination?
Yeah, well, let's maybe keep this focus just on the reopening. So, yeah, and I believe two of your facilities are opened right now, Murfreesboro and Bentonville. So, yeah, and I believe Tennessee can be reopened. Your gyms in Tennessee could be reopened, but they aren't yet. So, yeah, maybe some of the thinking around that.
Okay, yeah. We closed all of our gyms. We have 4 locations. We closed them on March 18th, which was a little bit before we had to. We saw a real precipitous drop in check-ins, and we were worried about our staff. It just didn't make sense, so we closed. And then we have rules in Arkansas for Bentonville. Then for Tennessee, Rutherford County, where Murfreesboro is governed by the state, and the 2 gyms in Nashville are governed by the Davidson County metro government. So there was a lot to manage watching all the different ones. Now, Arkansas wasn't hit as hard as Tennessee was, in particular Davidson County. So we were pushed pretty early there that we were able to open, but we didn't. You know, when we put our employees on furlough, they went on unemployment, and changing that, like getting them to come back and getting ready to open, it just takes a minute. It's not like they can just throw a switch and show back up the next day. Not really fair to them either. So at all of our gyms, we've been opening 1 to 2 weeks after we're allowed to. And part of that is just kind of making sure we understand what it's going to take to open well, having the cleaning supplies, having the staff comfortable. So Bentonville opened on May 12th, and Murfreesboro opened on May 18th, and then our big gym in Nashville will open on June 3rd. So it's been kind of phased where we're focusing on one. We take that plan, what worked, what didn't, take it to the next one, and are able to kind of execute again. So doing all four at once would have been pretty hard. It's worked pretty well doing one, and also we're phasing what we're doing. So we have limited hours with members only at first, then we add member guests, then day passes, and so we're kind of growing the offering as we feel like we're capable and the staff is comfortable.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I did notice that Bentonville is opening up to all customers on June 1st, so Monday, and then Murfreesboro is still members only with no full reopening queued up yet.
It's
And is that,
coming soon. We just haven't announced it yet.
yeah?
It'll be
So that's that was more of just that cadence was something that you decided on rather than anything that was given by any of those local counties or states. And Bentonville just happened to be the one that opened up earliest.
Yeah, because we have to open at 50% capacity, and even if we look at 50% capacity in our gyms, it's still a lot of people. Like for instance, Murfreesboro, 50% of capacity would be 300 people, and the thought of what it would look like to have 300 people in a climbing gym when we're being asked to have, you know, groups no larger than 10 and social distancing, it seemed like, just a bad look.
Yeah.
So we've kind of ratcheted that down a little more and done a reservation system to kind of try to measure it throughout the day, and that's gone real well. And so it's just kind of a crawl, walk, run where we try to not just open the floodgates and put ourselves and our employees in a bad situation, and our customers too. We want to make sure everyone is comfortable. It's just, yeah, we're just taking it slowly. It's hard to do.
Right. And if I recall correctly from our previous calls, I believe you're the first gym we've had on who's furloughed employees on any of these reopened calls. So it'd be great to hear how that experience, like re-engaging, getting people back in, went. You kind of hinted at some challenges there.
Sure, yeah. And it was a really difficult decision to furlough 200 employees. I mean, these are people that we love and care about, and they're part of our family, really. Um, but with the extra money that was coming from the government, it was actually better for them financially to be on unemployment than what we could try to continue to support them with. And so we made that hard decision. And by and large, people have been excited to come back. I mean, we're 2 months in, and people love climbing, and we all agree on this vision of sharing this thing we love with people, and so they get an opportunity to come back and do that. So we've been, when we're opening a gym and they all roll back in, I want to give them all a virtual hug, and it's really emotional having people back in there working and getting ready and seeing customers come in. So it's really exciting, but we've not had any problem getting people to come back. We've not been able to unfurlough really all that many because, youth programs haven't started back, and all the things that are going to require all the additional staff aren't there yet. So we're just kind of bringing them back in phases as we can. But it's been great so far.
Yeah, and so you mentioned some of the capacity, differences between what you're doing and what the state's allowing. What's the total capacity that you've gone with for your reservation slots?
Let's see. In Bentonville, I believe we're doing 25 every half hour, and in Murfreesboro, doing 30 every half hour.
Okay.
I think that's right.
Oh, so are time slots limited to 30 minutes at both gyms then?
No, their full reservation is, and we have a lot of things built into the capacity thing, right? So instead of 50% capacity, we're running more on like 35% capacity. So that way we can allow walk-ins and stuff. And then we have reservations every half hour, and the reservation lasts 2 hours, but we ask for people to stay 90 minutes. But we try to do that so that we're not policing anything. Like not going to ask anybody to leave.
Mhm.
So there's a little bit of flexibility built in if someone stays longer or wants to book another session if someone's really having a great time and wants to book a second session. All that's kind of built into some flexibility in that schedule system. So.
And did you guys see any unique challenges in dealing with locations in different states and different counties in Tennessee?
Yeah, for sure. One of them is masks. In Arkansas, we're required to require masks. But their wording was a little confusing. They said unless you're exercising, and if you take off the mask, you're required to do 12-foot distancing. So we were struggling between, because climbing, it can be exercise, but I think what they were referring to was specifically like heavy cardio, like running on a treadmill, right? So in our fitness area, we space the treadmills out every 12 feet and you're not required to wear a mask. But in the climbing area, if we had to keep 12-foot distance, that would really shrink the capacity. And we all tried it out and don't love wearing masks while we're climbing, but it's not really that hard, honestly. I mean, different masks perform differently and we all are making sacrifices that we don't want, but being able to keep the 6-foot separation if we're all wearing masks meant we can serve more members and customers. And I think from what I've seen, it means that everyone in there is going to be a little more safe, and we were good with that too. So that's a big struggle because some people don't believe they're effective, and some people it affects them more while they're trying to climb or recreate or exercise or whatever. And so it's hard to find that balance. So yeah, that's a tough one. And Arkansas is different than Tennessee. Tennessee wasn't requiring the mask, but then Davidson County is requiring. So it's all different.
Yeah, and so in Murfreesboro, are you guys requiring masks there as well, or are you just going with the local?
We are requiring it. I mean, we're kind of trying to apply standards company-wide that we feel are reasonable. And also seems like it's probably easier for it to start restrictive and loosen than to start too loose and then add restrictions. So, I mean, I'm hoping that we can lift some of the restrictions sooner than later. And, but yeah, we're kind of applying them across the board to our company.
All right. And how have those two different communities reacted to those requirements? Has everyone been pretty understanding?
Largely, people are understanding. I mean, people are scared and frustrated, and so we've had some people like kind of lash out, and um, like for instance, one of the locations people were complaining. I'm like, we're following the guidelines that have been asked of us, and if you have a problem, contact your elected officials. Like we're just doing what's being asked, and so yeah, people can be frustrated, but I just try to give them a little grace because I mean we're all doing the best we can every day, right? And we're just kind of winging it.
Yeah, definitely. Any other especially notable policy shifts that you guys have made in reopening? Beyond maybe some of the obvious ones that everyone's doing, increasing cleaning, and I'm sure your employees are wearing masks as well.
Oh yeah, they're wearing masks. I mean, we're doing temperature checks for everybody coming in the gym,
Okay.
customers and employees, and so there's a few things like that. But I think it's pretty normal for what a lot of businesses are doing. So I don't think we're I don't think we're out on an island with these decisions. But no, we're just trying to get back to business as usual as best we can.
Yep. Um, all right. I'm just going to shift over to Texas A&M and Jason. Yeah, love to hear a little bit about your story of closing and then reopening the walls.
Yeah, ours. I'm always struck whenever I'm in the CWA crowd because it's a little bit different animal when you're dealing with climbing walls at universities sometimes, largely because you're couched within a larger university structure that then has the capacity to really impose restrictions or policy down on you that may not fit real well sometimes. Our commitment is to the students of Texas A&M to stay open as long as we could. Just to provide them a recreational resource on campus. Some of the students didn't go home whenever school shut down. School shut down for the entire remainder of the spring into the summer, right after spring break. So we knew they were going to be online, but some of the kids came from areas where going home would put them in a place that had far more distribution of the disease than we had. So we needed to be a kind of a resource to them. We stayed open through the 26th of March when the governor of Texas finally kind of put out a decree that said all gyms will close. And so we closed the next day. That was on Thursday. By 3 p.m. that day, we had the building shut down and locked up. Prior to that, we had been enforcing some pretty stringent policies on social distancing and cleaning regimens, that sort of thing, that were a little bit accelerated. We stayed closed all the way through and up until May 18th, when we reopened at 10 a.m. that morning. Again, when the governor said, you're free to open up with the following restrictions, and there's a laundry list of them, and we've had to comply with those. And so the staff is doing all the regular stuff, staff's wearing masks, that kind of thing, wearing gloves, putting up sneeze guards. When we reopened the climbing facility, we reopened it as well as the weight room and the pools on a very limited basis, where, like Lance had said, we had to sign up. So we had people signing up for slots. Our slots are 50 minutes long. And right now we're only using the auto belays to be able to enforce the social distancing policy that the state wants. So we have 3 auto belay units. They can sign up ahead of time to come in and climb for 50 minutes on any one of the 3 units, and they can kind of rotate through the 3 units as well. Enforcing the use of hand sanitizer. Same deal with our bouldering wall, 3 slots at the bouldering wall, 50 minutes long. They can come in and boulder for 50 minutes and they have to leave. And if there's a slot open behind them, they could stay longer if they need to, if there's an unoccupied spot. Prior to reopening, we embarked on a pretty significant cleaning process that we had never done before. We'd never power washed our wall. We never disinfected the entire surface of the wall, which we did. We had to get kind of creative with how we did that. As you can imagine, a 45-foot tower housed inside of a 450,000 square foot rec center, it gets complicated and messy pretty quick. We did it, and our route setters came in, set routes on just the walls that we were going to reuse, which allowed, that kind of make sure that people aren't going to be climbing when they're not supposed to. And we made sure we had enough spacing between routes to really keep that social distancing enforced, even when they were on the auto belays. Masks have become the newest sort of area of focus. They're not required throughout our state. They're suggested. However, our university administration has come in and said masks are going to be required all over campus, no matter where you are, except unless you're exercising. And like Lance pointed out, that's that term gets very ambiguous very quick. Like, what does that mean exactly? Does that mean if you're in the rec center, you have to have a mask on? Does that mean you have to have a mask on unless you're on the treadmill? What about the bench press? What about the climbing wall? And so right now we're kind of working through getting exceptions to that mask policy for some specific areas. And it looks like the exceptions are going to be if you're in the weight room working out, if you're on the track running, if you're on a piece of cardio machinery, or if you're climbing, you don't have to have a mask on. However, if you're belaying, you do have to have a mask on. If you're standing around waiting on your turn, you'll have to have a mask on. So that's kind of how we're shaking out at this point. Staff have to have masks on and gloves on the entire time they're working.
Yeah, so that was really interesting. There's 2 reasons I thought you were an excellent addition to this call, even though you're not a commercial facility. I imagine you've had just a massive number of conversations with people who don't know climbing and don't know the sport, and have had to make some arguments for the policies that you think are going to be best in that facility. And I think it's going to be a pretty similar conversation that a lot of commercial gym owners might have to have with local public health authorities. So yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of that operating in that larger bureaucracy, and then making arguments to people who don't intimately know the sport and might just be making assumptions.
Yeah, it's really weird because I guess I've been doing this for about 20 years, and I've developed over time my elevator speech for what belaying is and why boulders don't wear harnesses, and all the other things that we talk about. And what really blew everybody's mind early on, there was a huge focus in our facility on keeping things clean, right? Disinfecting hard surfaces, all the major touch points. How do we put our How do we put cleaning agents on all those touch points on a regular basis? And right now, a piece of cardio equipment, once one user gets off, a staff member can walk up, wipe that piece of cardio equipment down, and it's clean again. And it really drew everybody's attention when they realized that you can't do that with the climbing wall. You can't go and wipe down every single hold after every single climber. And what really flipped them on their ear was when they found out that we really never washed the climbing wall. And they're like, wait, you never washed? Why don't you wash in the climbing wall? And I had to tell them, like, imagine what that's like. You know, think about the work involved in doing that. When I take a power washer 45 feet in the air and just start blowing this stuff off, what is that going to do? It's going to aerosolize everything. We're talking about clearing a huge chunk of the building in order to make that happen. Then they began to kind of really understand, wow, there is a giant process associated with this that we didn't really expect, because the climbing wall is always just this thing that's in the middle of the rec center and it's neat and it's fun to watch, but it's this strange animal that we don't really understand how it operates. We just know that Jason's got it and he's going to make it happen, right? And so I have had to develop those kind of elevator talks to help them understand that. And make some compromises. Yes, we can't wipe down every climbing hold. However, what we can do is take a 3-hour break in the afternoon and go up to the top of the wall and spray each climbing hold on each of the 3 faces that we're servicing with the auto belays with a pH neutral disinfectant, let it sit for 20 minutes. And so for the most part, the administration, when they heard that, they're like, okay, well, that's a good substitution for wiping down each hold every time. And we had a walkthrough before we opened up about 3 days before with our environmental health and safety administrators on campus, and looping them into the conversation early and being proactive about telling them, like, this is what we are doing. Here's our plan. Really kept them from dictating a plan to us that didn't work, and made it far easier for us to exist in a landscape where we have now established that we know what we're doing. We're being proactive. We're not trying to hide anything. Yes, we're not meeting the rule as written for this rule. However, we're meeting it in a different way, or we're satisfying the requirement in a little bit different way. And here's how: by mapping that out. So if there's other university climbing gyms, I would say get those folks. Don't hide from them. Get those folks on board very quickly and educate them. Pour some energy into educating them on what's going on. And whenever they hear that, they're going to be pretty good with it.
Yeah, and the other unique experience that I think you might have that's shared in the commercial space, but probably at a much higher frequency and much larger volume, would be the rental equipment that you deal with. And I would even include like the other outdoor rec gear that you have. Would love to hear your thoughts and what you guys have been doing to keep rental gear going, because I believe I saw that that's still active.
Absolutely. Yeah, the hard stuff, or the easy stuff to do, is wiping down a canoe with a bleach solution, right, and letting it sit for a while. That's going to kill the virus. The harder stuff is the soft goods. We've made a choice to basically do an isolation and then washing policy. We have enough sleeping bags and enough tents and a low enough, there's no students on campus right now, although we have a student on campus population of 68,000 right now during a regular semester. We don't have near that many in town right now, and not near that many expected this summer. So what we can do is, when a sleeping bag comes back in, put it in a box, let it sit for a week, and then after that week, put it through the washing machine and then into the dryer, and then coming back out, and then it goes into the back of the queue for being rented out next. And the idea is that by the time it makes it back to the front, it's been a month or more. Ditto with our climbing harnesses. That's kind of how we're approaching them right now, with staff harnesses and with public harnesses. We are asking, though, that again, much like Lance, the only people we're open to right now are people that were members during the spring, and we're asking them to bring their own climbing harness, which for the most part they're going to do anyway. So there's very, very little rental gear coming in and out other than shoes, and shoes we're disinfecting with a spray disinfectant after every use.
Okay. All right. And then, yeah, let's find out what's happening over in Germany with you, Christian.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, what's happening in Germany? Crazy times here.
Yeah.
So going back to March, we had to lock down our gym, or both gyms, I think it was Monday, 16th of March. And we could see it coming because we saw the whole time what's going on in Italy, what happened in Austria. So we were sitting here and knew, okay, we will close our gyms maybe in a week or in two. And I started talking to my staff, and they were like, Christian, what are you telling us? This is a problem. It's only in Italy. It stays in Austria. And I was like, no, it will come. It's only a question of days. We should be prepared. And I spoke to some other gym owners, and everybody was like, okay, what should we do? Should we close now, or should we wait until we got if there is a kind of regulation from the government that we have to close? Okay, then we discussed, okay, no, we should wait. So we waited until this weekend, 14th, 15th of March, and closed our gyms Monday. And in a way, it was kind of a shock. We was there and said, okay, no, and what will happen now? What was the stuff? What about how long will that go on? And I was really shocked for a couple of days. I was really like, okay, I felt like I can't do anything. And then I thought, no, okay, now go into an active mode, and I try to develop strategies. So the first thing I did, I wrote this article about the crisis. And after that, a couple of friends called me and said, Christian, do you think we will open normally, or will be some regulations? And I said, I don't know. We should be prepared for everything. And then we started to develop ideas, different strategies, what could be helpful, what is important. And I mean, few of you have maybe read this strategy proposal, and this was just a collection of ideas, a kind of a toolbox of things where we thought, okay, this could be helpful. And we didn't know what we should prepare, because there was no other country in Europe, and I guess not everywhere else, that could say, be prepared for this way or be prepared for another way. So we thought, okay, we put everything into the toolbox on this list to say, okay, now we have got a good list of arguments, and we tried to get in contact with the government, with the federal state in the area where I live. I tried to work out solutions with them, because I knew they will put us in the same category like fitness gyms. And we thought, okay, this can be dangerous, because being in the same category like fitness gyms will mean we have to clean or to disinfect the tools people use. And we thought, okay, we have to do everything to make sure that we will not be in the same category, because it was clear, and it is still clear, it's impossible to clean every hole after using. So what happened is, and it's still, so we have got different federal states here, and the country where we are running our two gyms opened really early, beginning of May. It was, in a way, it was a surprise for us, because Wednesday, the May 6th of May, the governor said, okay, the gyms can open Monday the 11th. And I was like, wow, that's in 4 days. I was really surprised. And then I spent the whole April with figuring out ideas how we can reopen climbing gym, and I was surprised, because I was like, okay, now what will happen? And I expected really, really high and strict regulations, and it was just distance and reducing the capacity of people in the gym and washing and cleaning the hands. And I was like, okay, nothing more? No, nothing more. It was so simple. And but it was not really clear if we would be, because it happened that they put us in the same category like fitness gyms. So they are not talking about climbing gyms. So I tried to contact the government and ask, hey, are we in the same category? Are you sure we can open next Monday? And they say, yeah, you can open next Monday. Or special regulations for us. And they say, no, just the normal ones. You can use the regulations for the fitness gyms, and you can also use the regulations or the strategies you and the sport association set up. That was in Germany, the DAB, who set up a kind of a strategy or kind of a list of things that could be helpful. So now I had a choice. And I was like, okay, that's fine. That's easy for us, because it's just distance and washing the hands. So, and now we have open since two weeks. And it's not difficult to handle the hygiene activities. It's more difficult to handle the whole situation from the economic view on it, because usually we have got 100 to 150 people in our climbing center and the same number of people in our bouldering gym. And now it's only less than half of it over in the same time. And it happened exactly that what I've written in the first article I published in April in this article about the 4 phases of managing the crisis. Now in summer is always a bad time for reopen because people are used to be outdoors. So and the next problem is we are not allowed to do any climbing courses. We cannot run our kids and youth programs. We have no children birthday parties. We have no schools in our gym. So this is nearly 50% of our customers we don't have. So we have just the people that are interested in coming climbing, and the number of people that can be here in the gym at the same time is reduced. So we thought, okay, we have to work with these time slots and make sure that we get over the day maybe the maximum capacity of people into the gym. And now we see an interesting kind of development, because we are running a bouldering gym and a climbing gym, rope climbing gym in the same city. And the boulder gym, where we have got a younger target group, is fine. So we have got the number of people we would like to expect over the day, average age between 15 and 25. In the climbing gym, in the rope climbing gym, the average age of our customers is more between 25 to 40 and older, and they are not coming. So they are not interested anymore. So we have got maybe only 30% of the number of people that we have usually in May and June. So I'm at the point where I think maybe I should close down my climbing gym until end of summer and reopen in October again. So this is one of the biggest problems I see. And I spoke to a couple of gym owners in Germany and in Europe, and they see, and it's really difficult to say it's clear, but we see the same development everywhere. So bouldering is fine and climbing is not running so good right now. And that's quite interesting. We don't know exactly why that is. I can only expect because after 2 months lockdown that people get used not being active in indoor sports. We see that we have got an older customer group that's doing rope climbing. They are probably a bit more afraid of getting infected. We see the fact that people have less money that they can spend into the sport. And now we are going into the summertime, into the summer holiday time. So, and we see, and that's the next development we see here in Germany, we see the first gyms getting bankrupt. They were not open again. Yeah. They're running out of money and they find no solution to reopen. Yeah.
And you didn't have much support from the government over there, correct?
We had at the beginning we had really good support. Yeah, I was really surprised that they were able to set up such good programs. So I had a look to the other countries, Great Britain, to Italy, to France, and gym owners asked me what help you get, and I said, hey, it's not too bad. So first thing we do, I think we could send our whole staff into, I don't know if it's the right translation, short time. So the government is paying 60% of the usual salary, yeah? Okay. But we can keep them. we were allowed to reduce our rent for 3 months. So I don't have to pay rent until end of June, and I have to pay that back, but I have got 2 years now to pay the rent back. And I think 3 weeks after lockdown, we got directly support money from the government. So cash, not to pay back. So we got we are a company with 2 gyms, and we have got 65 people working for us. So we got, for an example, we got 25,000 euros. I mean, that's nearly $25,000, I guess. I don't know exactly. So, and this was just okay support, yeah. And we still see now gyms seriously in trouble, and that's interesting to see.
Yeah. Touch back on the interest in bouldering over roped climbing. Is that something that you've seen in either of your locations, Lance?
Sorry, I think I heard the question. I've got an 8-year-old roller skating above me currently. So, but you asked if there's a more interest in bouldering than routes.
Yeah, Christian has a gym that's bouldering only, and then a gym with ropes. And his bouldering only gym is doing okay, but his roped gym is seeing a much more significant decrease in people returning.
Well, all of our gyms so far have both. I mean, our Murfreesboro gym has a lot of bouldering, and I think most of the people that have been in there are bouldering more than doing routes. So we're definitely seeing that use more, but we haven't opened up our bouldering only gyms yet. So I couldn't say what we're seeing yet.
And yeah, I think Christian's guess is that the demographics of those 2 locations, mostly around age, might be what's driving that difference. Do you see any change in a lower age returning faster than older people at your gyms?
I have to be honest, I haven't looked that closely at who's checking in to know yet. I could ask, but no, I'm not aware of that yet. But I'm curious now.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the first that I've heard anyone reporting anything like that. It's definitely an interesting area.
And I want to say too, Christian, I really appreciate that document y'all put out. That was really helpful to us to see that and kind of have an idea, like you said, a toolbox of things to do that really helped me a ton. And so thank you for putting that out and being willing to do all the work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's see. It sounded like both of you guys are using, or all 3 of you are using reservation systems. Have any of you hit capacity on at any time, or have you always been below?
There's a couple of our time slots during the day that are more favorable than others, but for the most part, we've been really surprised at how we have not hit capacity. But we're seeing the same effect in our weight room right now, which we really expected the 100-person minimum or maximum rather in the weight room to be hit. And I think we've only hit it 3 or 4 times each day, which is pretty unusual for us. It's usually standing room only in there. And so I think everyone is a little surprised in our operation about how few students we saw when we did throw the doors back open. We on an average day in our rec center, we get between 5,000 and 7,000 entrances. And I think we didn't have any single day where we got more than 1,000 when we finally reopened. So I think it's just a sign of the fact that there's not that many students in town, and the faculty and staff who tend to be older and probably tend to be folks who are going to kind of hang back and wait a little bit longer than everyone else before they return.
And Jason, have you had any issues with the 50-minute time slots that you're offering and people that just not being enough time for folks?
Not really, because we've removed the social component, right? Because they're not belaying one another, and there's not a large crowd like the Tuesday night crowd or the Wednesday afternoon crowd that always climbs together. They don't have that ability to get together. And so when you remove that social component, it really just draws it right back down to the physical. Like, am I getting my climbing in or not? And from what we've seen, we haven't heard a lot of complaints. It also, Laura, might be connected to the fact that we aren't hitting capacity. And so somebody can come in at 4, but they might be able to climb until 6. because the slots behind them, that 50-minute slot behind them, isn't filled. So they just say, "Hey, can I hang out for a little while longer?" Yeah, come on.
Gotcha.
That social side of it's a really interesting one, and I'd love to hear from you, Christian, because you have the cafe attached to your bouldering facility. Is the cafe opened back up, or is that still closed?
That's still closed.
Okay.
So that's also a challenge for us. So the gyms in Germany, and seeing nearly all gyms in Europe, offer a huge kind of gastronomic offer. So they've got little restaurants or little bars in the gyms. We have got a special concept where we really have a huge beer garden outside at the boulder gym. Can now open because it's outdoors, but it's still difficult. So in the climbing gyms, we are not, maybe we are now allowed to open the bar or the restaurant again, but it doesn't make sense because the regulations are so high and so strict that from the economic view on it, it's more work than it brings money in. So it's like, it doesn't make sense. That's maybe the biggest challenge. So today, one of our staff, of our trainers, called me and she asked, "Christian, I hear we are allowed to host or to give climbing courses again." And I said, "Yes, yeah, maybe we are. We can do kind of a top rope course or just a beginner course in climbing for 1 or 2 persons. But look, how much time we have to spend now to set up a hygiene concept for the climbing courses, to teach our staff how they have to work under all these hygiene regulations. To set up this concept, it took me maybe more than a week. And at the end, it doesn't make sense. So right now, I think I will wait until end of September, and hopefully we will have a new situation end of summer, and maybe we can go more into the normal mood. But who knows? Yeah, I mean, and so that's maybe the hardest part of it. And it's the same with the gastronomic offer. So restaurants and bars can open in our country here in our area, western part of Germany. We have to keep the distance of 1.5 meters between the guests. Yes. But if people sit at the table, we have to clean the table after they sit there. So if we would now open our beer garden completely full with chairs and tables, we need an extra person only responsible for cleaning the toilets, cleaning the tables, and we have to register the people. So maybe the biggest challenge right now is definitely to work out where it makes sense to run the business and where it doesn't make sense to do it.
Yeah. And are you offering any rental gear over there, or?
Yeah. We are fine with the rental gear. So if you want to rent a harness or climbing shoes, we are fine with that. Yeah, okay. Because there's no specific regulation that is saying you are not allowed. I mean, that's the crazy part of it. There are really, really strict regulations if you have a restaurant, not so strict regulations if you have a climbing gym. And if you have both in your gym, it's like, okay, it doesn't make sense. But it's also something I've learned in the last weeks. Not everything makes sense, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the rental gear situation look like for you, Lance?
Well, currently we're just kind of easing back into walk-ins, and so like if a member had the rental gear addition to their membership, then we basically have just been taking what they have and we bag it with their name on it, and so they just use the same thing every time they come. Now as we're adding guests and walk-in users, I imagine, I haven't asked for sure, but I think we'll be rotating it in, and I'm curious to see how long it takes us to rotate through our gear. The harnesses are the main thing, right? Because the shoes you can spray, but the harnesses, I wouldn't do it. How long it takes us to rotate through the harnesses before we need to bring it back in. But I saw on the little Q&A thing over here on the side, it's been real interesting since we've opened, and Christian's document said this, basically that climbing holes are an incredibly inhospitable environment for viruses, and that's something that was meaningful to us as we were trying to decide whether to open and when to open. But now the CDC has come out and said, basically, like, I mean, I don't know, it's really, really hard to catch the virus off of a surface. And so many of the things we're dealing with are really rough surfaces, and they're very dry, chalk, so, I mean, to me, I'm more personally concerned about like the mats in the fitness area where you get it real sweaty, even if you wipe it off, it takes a while to dry. So I don't have a whole lot of concern about the rental gear as much as I do things that are going to get wet, like a fitness mat. But we haven't had enough volume for it to be an issue yet.
Yeah, that's a great thing to highlight the new CDC, or the change in the CDC's language as of last week. That definitely is a help for for our industry for sure.
I mean, it's still here in Germany that all the scientists don't see a high risk of getting infected by touching a whole surface, by also in public transport. Whatever you do, whatever you touch, this is not the risk. What's still a high discussion that is going on here is that there is a high risk if too many people stay in a room that is where there's no air circulation going on. They all say, okay, we need distance, and we have to make sure that there is enough air circulation in the building. That's really important. And this is something where they now have a focus on. They say, okay, we have not the focus anymore on cleaning and disinfection. We have more focus on distance and definitely on fresh air. Yeah.
Here's another interesting question in our question box. Have you guys seen any changes in people's schedule since they might be working from home and having a different lives at the moment, or are you still busiest in those after work hours?
We're still busiest in the evening. We haven't expanded to morning hours yet for our locations, and so our hours are still somewhat limited. So lunch and evening are the busiest times for us.
Same with us. We have times in the morning that we're open, but we're far busier at 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m.
And how does that look in Germany, Christian? Have you seen any shift in people's participation patterns?
We see, it's interesting because we decided to open the gyms only in the early afternoon. So in the morning, the gyms are closed right now. We see a peak directly at the beginning. So when we open at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, there's directly a group of 20, 30 people coming. And then the next one is in the early evening. So it's still that the people would like to do sport in the evening. Yeah.
All right.
We've gotten some questions here about health checks. So wonder if you all could speak to what health checks you're doing, if you are doing them, and how you're handling them.
All of our students on campus are being asked to health screen every morning, before they decide to come to campus. But being a state university, we end up being in a really complicated situation with HIPAA laws as well as FERPA laws, which is the Federal Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Most student health issues are actually governed under FERPA, which can be a little bit more stringent than HIPAA. And so we don't do health checks at all. We don't take anybody's temperature. We don't do any of that kind of stuff. We just ask them to do it on their own. Now a bigger conversation is beginning to emerge about what if somebody doesn't do a good health check on themselves and they're exhibiting symptoms. What capacity do we have to ask them to be removed from the building or to take them out of the building? And that conversation is ongoing. But that's a pretty complicated one for state universities all over America. We have some, for the most part, we are pretty limited on how much health information we can gather from our students. And our legal teams tend to be pretty leery of that.
Yeah, I'll say a little teaser for our webinar next Tuesday. We'll have Jason Pill back with us to talk about some of the legal issues around this. Not quite as specific as FERPA, but it help give you guys, at least in the U.S., some of the sensitivities you need to think about with health screenings.
And we do a temperature check for everybody coming in. We have some screening questions on our reservation system, and if you answer yes to certain questions, and these questions have been required by different, jurisdictions, but not all are unanimous. But anyways, if you answer yes to those questions, we ask you not to come in, and that's really it. If you've exhibited symptoms, if you visited XYZ, if they say yes, then we just ask them not to come in. So we keep it pretty simple.
Yeah. And has that been anything that was suggested by the government in Germany, Christian?
No, that's what I mean. So now Bavaria is the latest federal state here that allows to open the climbing gyms next week. So beginning of June, or 8th of June it is exactly. But it's still the same. It's only keeps the distance, make sure not too many people on this in your building, and just normal hand hygiene, and that's it. And I'm a bit surprised about it. I spent many hours to set up all the tools that maybe could be helpful and put them into this document, and now here it is only the normal basic things. So there's no discussion about liquid shock, magnesia, climbing with a mask. Is no discussion about that here. It's not going on. We talked about that in this last call, and I'm sure it's only because we have got such a low number of infections here in Germany. So I'm quite sure if the number of people that are infected is higher, we are not talking about climbing with a mask or using liquid shock. They will lock down it again. That's it. So it's only the gyms can be open if the number of infection in that area is fine. If it gets higher, they will close them again. And so it seems there is no step between. Even if we would argue and say, hey, we have got good arguments, I'm quite sure they would say, no, there's a high risk, we will lock down again.
Yeah.
But we will see that maybe in the end of the year. Yeah.
Yeah, getting close to the end of our time together for today. So we'll have time for one more question. I think this one's a great one. All of you guys are operating at a lower capacity than you could operate at, and it'd be interesting to see like what went into that decision, whether you did any mapping of your facility or whether you just took a percentage off of whatever you were allowed to do.
And I was just typing an answer over there in the Q&A to that one. So we started with the actual capacity based on the occupancy. It's usually on your architectural drawings. So we took that number and went to half. That's what we were asked to do. But then we tried to add up where we thought those people could be in the gym. So for instance, if Murfreesboro was 600 and we cut that to 300, if we tried to place 300 people around in the gym, what would that look like? And it was a lot. So then we kind of went back and said, okay, based on 50%, we've got 100 people in the top rope area. What would we feel comfortable with? 60. I'm just making that number up. And then the bouldering, instead of 150 people there, we think it's probably 70 or whatever. So we tried to kind of do that, and then we posted those on signs around the space. Oh. We haven't really had to deal with that except in workout areas where, if people take their masks off and they need to keep 12 feet, it's a little harder to space, but, our bouldering areas get a little more crowded, but we just tried to think what it looked like, and one of the things we thought was, what if a picture got out of 100 people in the bouldering area? What's that going to look like? I mean, the perception of that, the reality is bad. The perception is bad. So we just try to be cautious. And once again, it's easier to ease those restrictions than it's going to be to crank them down if something's not going well.
Yeah. And are you using any monitors to display publicly what the current, how many people are currently in the gym? Any occupancy counters like that?
We don't, but someone did ask this. We use the checkout system on RGP to make sure we know how many people are in there at any time, and that's worked really well. I think we might use that permanently. It's been really good.
Okay.
But if it gets too crowded, we use tasers. People run away when you start using tasers.
We were told by for us, gyms were allowed to open at 25% occupancy. We have a 450,000 square foot facility that we operate inside of. So what we did was broke it up into smaller areas and said, okay, what does occupancy look like in these areas? And then what are our pinch points getting to those areas? You know, so walking into the building, there might be a pinch point going down to the climbing wall. Well, then how many people are allowed in that one small area? And then once they get to the climbing wall, for right now, we're not doing any rope climbing. It's all auto belays. But when we do eventually open rope climbing back up, we're going to be looking at typical occupancy maximum is 30. Well, if we're back to 50% occupancy by then, and there's a plan in Texas to step it back up to 50% at some point this summer, well, then what does 15 people in our area look like? And I think much like Lance, we had the same kind of decision making at hand with our weight room that has a 635 person capacity. When we left for the break, we were only allowing 50 in at one time. Texas has said you shouldn't group together in groups more than 10. Well, now we could at 25%, we could still operate at 150, 175 people, whatever. But we've made the decision that only 100 is our maximum. That's where we draw the line. Even though we could go bigger, it would look bad. It would feel weird to have that many people in close proximity, and we just don't like the optics of it. And so what we settled on is 100 for there, and then 3 at the boulder wall. Same kind of decision. Look at that space, and we began mapping it out, saying, okay, if we had a person here and a person here and a person here, does that 6-foot distance still get maintained? Yes. Okay, then 3's the number instead of 5 or 6 or 10.
Yeah. And how about you, Christian?
I mean, we had this. We have got the recommendation from the sport association that said, okay, 1 person per 10 square meters would be good. And then I had a look into the regulations published from the government, and there was written for fitness gyms, 7 square meters per person is fine. And when we checked at our gym, and even 1 person per 10 square meters, it feels like, oh, it's too many people in the gym. Yeah, so we decided to reduce the number of people a bit, so that it's more that everybody feels safe. Yeah, we felt responsible for our customers and said, okay, even if we would be allowed to have 50 or 60 people on the mat in our boulder gym, maybe 40, 45 is full enough, because it's really difficult to keep the distance during the sport. So we reduced the number, but I mean, this is still difficult to run the gym in an economic view on it.
Yeah.
But I mean, hard is also, we have got many gyms in Germany, and there is a kind of a competition going on in the market. I know it's dangerous if one gym's offering more than the other is. So they say, okay, time slot in your gym is only 2.5 hours, and come over to my gym because here you can stay 3 hours or 4 hours. So then this is something I see, this would be dangerous for the market if we now try to compete with these kind of regulations we set up. So we're trying to be in a dialogue here with the gym owners to say, hey, let's keep that in a kind of balance and not try to compete now with the regulations that we.
All right. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time together, so I am just going to close this out here. Oops, and I believe I shared the wrong screen. There we go. So I just wanted to remind you guys that we're going to our webinars at a once-a-week schedule, and that's going to start next week. So next week we'll have Jason Pill with us, as I mentioned, talking about some of the legal issues in the U.S. and hopefully they're useful for other people just as a general framework. And we'll be doing that on Tuesday at 10 a.m. and every week going forward, Tuesdays at 10 a.m. A couple other calls, just teasers that will be coming up, are going to be around crisis communication, how to have difficult conversations with folks. We're also going to be having some help for you guys on how to do any of the digital presentations and group classes that you might be continuing on as a bit of a hybrid as you reopen. And then we'll be providing just more and more content after that. Also wanted to take a minute just to say thank you to everyone who's been listening in on these calls, sharing your ideas in the chat, keeping your membership going with us. We couldn't do any of this stuff without all of you. So yeah, just thanks again to everyone from everyone here at the CWA. And as always, you can get in touch with us at any time. Get any of the updated information on our coronavirus resource page and on our roadmap to reopening that we've published. If you ever need anything, just reach out directly, and we will see everyone on our call next Tuesday. Have a great rest of the week, everyone. Bye.